This is the 9th generation iPad. 9 generations. It's been a while since the iPad's been out, and there's been so many versions of it, it's hard to keep track. But the reality is, in the last couple of years, there haven't been a lot of changes that are really significant. It's been small little incremental updates, but the thing is, it doesn't matter because as a base platform, this is a fantastic device, and the price just makes it even better. Starting at $330, it's really a hard argument to have with this because it's got great power, great software, and you're gonna find it really hard to find anything like this for $330. So let me go ahead and start unboxing it and show you guys what you get when you buy a $330 iPad. And I do want to point out that this box is actually plastic wrapped, so this one didn't get the no plastic wrap treatment that the iPhones did this year. And not only is it plastic, it's the plastic of the old days where there's no pull tab to tear it. You get to do the satisfying either pull of it, or with your nails, or with a knife. And I used to love, this was my favorite part of any Apple unboxing, and we've kind of lost it over the years, but I love it because I love cutting out the square, and it's, you don't have to, you could just cut a tiny bit and then the plastic will tear away, but where's the fun in that? It's an experience. It's fun for me. I don't know. I'm sure that somebody out there will understand why this is so entertaining to me, but yeah, come on, there we go. And here we have our sheet of perfect plastic going away. And let's go ahead, turn over the box. I don't even have to take off the top piece of plastic because of that perfect cut. And we're gonna, come on box, lift up. There we go. Come on, come on. Boom. All right. So right off the bat, I noticed that the iPad is front and center, and it is facing up. Also, this is a more, this is the paper-based plastic cover that they have this year, which is nice. More recyclable material, less plastic. Not a bad thing. I'm going to put this to the side for a second. Initial impressions, this thing is a little bit heavy. I didn't expect it to be that heavy. In the box, you do get this documentation packet. Let's see what documents are in here. You get a quick start guide, I'm presuming. Yeah, quick start guide. Nothing too complicated, but just barely enough to make sense of. You get a warning thing, and you get 2 Apple stickers, which is very gracious of them. 2 Apple stickers, very, very great. But the thing that I think I am most, I can't even believe I have to say this. The biggest thing about this is that it does come with a charger. And at $330, it truly does feel like they're doing us a favor by including this, which is stupid. It shouldn't feel like that, but given the state of cost cutting we're in these days, even a charger feels like a big deal. You get a 20-watt fast charger, USB-C, and you get a USB-C to Lightning cable. So these are all, for $330, you're pretty much set to go out of the box. You don't have to buy anything extra unless you want a case. But that's interesting. I'm going to go ahead, put this to the side, and let's look at the iPad itself, because that's the thing I'm most curious about. I haven't had an entry-level iPad in, I want to say, I don't think ever, actually. I'm trying to remember, because I had the original iPad, and I used that for a very long time. And my iPad after that was, my first iPad after that was the iPad Air. And after that, there was the Air 2, and then beyond, and from there, I had I upgraded straight to the Pro, and I've had a Pro ever since. So this is my first entry-level iPad, so I'm excited to see what the experience is like. So this is a very familiar silver. It looks very, very close to my iPad Pro, actually. A very large surface area. Go ahead and put this to the side as well. On the back, it has that very traditional iPad shape. It very much so reminds me of my iPad Air. Air 2 at least. Very, very similar design. I wish I had that with me right now because if I put them side by side, I wager that they look pretty much identical from the back, besides the smart connector you have right here. So you get a smart connector right there. The light and the silver color are making it a little bit hard to see on camera, but it's right here, and this is going to be used for connecting up keyboards or other smart accessories. I don't really think Apple sells any other smart accessories beside the keyboard, first party. In the front, of course, you've got a black display, no white display, which I'm actually a fan of, a fully black display. You got Touch ID, which is something I haven't had on an iPad for a little bit. And power buttons on the top right. Oh, sorry, the volume buttons on the top right, power button on the top as well. That's about it. There's only bottom firing speakers, so no stereo setup going on at all. So let me go ahead and turn on the iPad. I do have to say, the iPad does kind of, I thought the bezels would hug a little bit tighter to the edges. Once it turns on and there's a white screen, you guys will be able to see what I'm talking about. I knew that the top and bottom did have, a little bit of a chin going on, but I thought that the sides had gotten a little bit tighter, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, another thing about this iPad that is a downgrade compared to all other iPads is that it has a laminated display, but I'm not sure how that's going to compare exactly because I haven't seen a laminated display and haven't used one, so I don't know if it's a real downgrade because I know a lot of tech tubers love to use that as a kind of negative point towards this iPad, but I want to see if it actually does mean anything of worth, if the normal person is actually going to be able to figure out if that's a bad thing or not. So give me a minute. I'm going to set this up and mess around with the iPad and come back to you guys and give you my initial impressions on everything about the new 9th generation iPad in silver. Alright guys, so I just spent the last couple of minutes messing around with the iPad, trying out the cameras, trying out the features, everything that it has to offer. And I have a couple of thoughts. So right off the bat, when I was setting up the phone, it prompted me to set up Touch ID. Now usually I just skip over Touch ID, and I'm glad I didn't today because I realized something when I was doing that. That is that this iPad actually has the first generation Touch ID, not the new second generation one. So the second generation one is incredibly fast. This one, not so much. It takes its sweet time comparatively. It's a little bit frustrating. Now the thing is here, why it looks so slow is because you have to, I haven't set the feature where you just unlock when it recognizes your thumb. It still waits for me to hit the home button. So if I hit the home button, then it unlocks. It still takes extra time comparatively, but it's a little bit annoying. But moving on from that though, the display. This is one of the most important parts of a tablet, right? Because you want it to be nice. And let's start off and talk about the quality of the display. It isn't as high resolution as my iPad Pro, but I only noticed that when looking at text very closely. I didn't really realize it for a couple of minutes, as I was just using it, sliding through things, setting it up, all that. I really didn't notice a big difference until I did that. I went in and I looked at, especially in settings, I went to settings and started to peer in and look at each of these things, and then okay, now I can see a slight difference, but that's pretty much it. The laminated display part of it, now that I can only tell if I'm looking for it, and I know what I'm looking for, that's why I can tell. What I'm looking for is when I tilt the iPad, you can kind of see that the display is a little bit sunken in. There's a little bit of gap between the glass and display. When you look at it head on, you can't tell. It's when you look at it from an angle, you can tell that it's a little bit sunken in. So that's something you need to have a keen eye for. It's not something you're going to be able to catch in general. That's just not something that's going to happen. That's a good thing because that means that this is one less limiting factor to making a recommendation. I don't think most people will look at this display and say, oh man, I just wish the display was better, otherwise I would have bought this. This display is more than good. And honestly, while I was watching videos and consuming content, I really thought the display was going to be the slight downgrade. What actually turned out being the downgrade for me, coming from an iPad Pro, was the speakers. So there are two speakers on this, but they're both bottom firing. So when I was watching content like this, I really felt damn, the audio is just not feeling right because it was all coming out of one side. Now, when you're using it right side up, no problem. It doesn't feel that bad. But for me, when I was just doing this, it definitely felt like, man, I was missing something. But this is, again, because I am spoiled with the pros that have the speakers on both sides. The stereo speaker setup is just, that the speaker setup on that is really the best on a tablet. So it is a hard comparison to live up to, but this does a decent job. It gets loud enough. It's definitely good to listen to music or watch movies on. That's not a problem at all. The only real thing is if they had shifted one of these speakers to the top, it would have been perfect, because it does have two speakers. I made sure that it wasn't just one hole being really loud. Like, I checked both, and these are both speakers on the bottom. But if they had moved one to the top, that would have been just fantastic and would have solved that problem pretty much instantly for me. But I think that's something they didn't do on purpose to just kind of have people jump up or have a selling point for the more expensive iPads. Moving on, another thing I'm noticing is that this does weigh a lot. It is heavy. I expected it to be lighter for some reason, but it is a heavy iPad. And I don't know why. I mean, my iPad Pro I feel like it's probably in and around the same weight, but this one just feels a lot heavier to hold in the hand. Because I use my iPad Pro in my hand all the time, and I don't feel the fatigue from it, but from this I'm definitely feeling the fatigue, which is interesting. Just that difference is something I didn't realize would be there. And I'm going to go through settings because I just realized I didn't move the auto lock thing, so it's going to keep trying to dim the display on me. But other than that, let's talk about the camera. So one of the biggest improvements was the front-facing camera. So the front-facing camera now is way better. It's a big improvement. Now, I don't have the older one to compare it with. I wish I did, but immediately I could look at it and tell this doesn't look bad at all. This looks very acceptable, especially given the fact that this is a $300 iPad. So the front camera is awesome. And one of the best features to come with it is center stage. So you can get center stage, an iPad Pro feature on the entry-level iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and put the screen recording of this up here, but basically I can move my head around and it will track everything I'm doing, which is just amazing. It's such a cool feature to have. It's extremely helpful, especially when you're in a video call or a conference call. It just given the thing about the iPads that always does irritate me is that the front camera is on the left side of the iPad if you have it up like this with a keyboard case. So what that means is you always have to have your iPad off to the right so that you're centered into frame versus having it in the middle, which is just the more natural position. With this, you no longer have to worry about that because center stage will focus the camera. It'll center it onto you, and you can have it wherever it's comfortable for you. And I love that feature. I really do. It's fantastic. The center stage, I really thought Apple would keep that a Pro exclusive, and I'm so happy that they didn't. This is a feature that I think everybody will really appreciate as they get to use it. And finally, I do want to talk about just the general usability of this. It's fantastic. So let me just show you some of the things you can do. So I was in Safari. I was watching this video, which I will actually lower the volume so it doesn't blast copyrighted music. So I was watching this video, which I was able to go ahead and put into picture-in-picture view. Then I was able to go ahead and tap these three buttons and open up a second app. And then I decided to open up Notes. You can open up Notes, and then you can kind of squeeze it like you want. If you want the notes to be bigger, you can do that. If you want the Safari window to be bigger, you can do that. So I do want the Safari window to be bigger. And conveniently, I have the iPad Wikipedia page open here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and roll down, and I say I'm making a report on the iPad. So let's just say iPad history. Now, don't do this, kids. Don't plagiarize, but I'm going to go ahead and plagiarize right here and copy directly the history from the Wikipedia. And what you can do is Apple has really made iPad life so easy because you don't even have to hit copy and paste. What you can do is just you can hold it down, bring it over, and it immediately copies whatever you did right there. So multitasking wise, and remember, I have a picture-in-picture thing going right here. At the same time, I have I can have multiple windows open, kind of rearrange them as I want. I can change out what I want. Like, it's so great. It's fantastic, the usability on this. And it doesn't skip a beat. It absolutely doesn't skip a beat. Like, you'd think that, okay, this doesn't have the latest processor and it's the entry-level iPad. Will it be able to do all the same, like, level of tasks that the expensive iPads can do. And yes, it can. It handles it like a champ, very smoothly and very brilliantly. So that, I think, really just goes to show how excellent this iPad really is for the price. For $330, you get a 64 GB iPad. This is the one. That's the one I have. I bought the 64 gig. You can pay extra and go up to the 256 gig, which still I think is worth it because you're still undercutting every other iPad in the lineup. But it gets dangerously close to $500, which is the starting point for the iPad mini. But again, the mini has a small display, so it doesn't really directly compete with this. The real next step up for a display size like this is going to be the iPad Air, which starts at $600, which is a little bit insane given that, I remember just a couple years ago, the iPad Pro used to start at $600. But I do really like a lot about this iPad. They have cost cut in some areas, like I said. The stereo speaker, the lack of stereo speakers is definitely a cost-cutting measure. The non-laminated display is a showcase of cost-cutting. The first generation Touch ID, which was I think the most shocking one for me, because these other ones don't feel like they're that big of a deal, but this one is definitely the most shocking. Just having that missing was a little bit disappointing. But beyond that, it really is the whole iPad experience. It's not watered down in any way when it comes to software, which is fantastic for this iPad, but makes it really bad for the pros because it just takes away a massive selling point from the pros, because this does everything for a much lower price. So I am very happy with this, and I'm going to continue testing this throughout the week and give you guys a full review after a couple of weeks of using it. But I am so far very happy about it, and if just going off of initial impressions, you ask me whether I recommend it or not, I'd absolutely recommend it, because there's nothing I've seen on here that would detract me, or I think I will find through my review period that will detract me from recommending this iPad. It is a fantastic piece of machinery, and I really highly recommend it. And if you guys haven't already and you want to check out more iPad content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because I have more iPad content coming and some case videos coming for the iPad as well. So if you guys want to see what cases I'm going to use or kind of figure out what case options are good, definitely subscribe to the channel, and be sure to follow me on social media as well. I'll have all the handles right here on the screen, and of course links down in the description below. So if you want to go check me out on there, feel free to do so. And I'll have links to the iPad and everything else that I talked about in this video in the description as well. So if you want to buy them or check them out, go hit those links. They really do help the channel, guys. That's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.